Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This evening, we are very privileged to have my good friend, Dr. Yu, coming here to present something wonderful, something very close to his life. And I would like to assure you that Dr. Yu is somebody you won't meet every day in the street. His vitality, his enthusiasm, and his charm is rarely matched by anyone I know. But anyway, he comes from the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. This evening, our event is co-organized by his university, that's the Polytechnic, and Body, Mind, Spirit platform, of which I chair, as well as Dreams Possible, hosting this wonderful place. And we are very honored and grateful to everyone who helped to make this a success tonight. And I would like also to thank Helen Lai, who is now interpreting for the whole evening. This evening, Dr. Yu will be having his presentation right now, and we will be doing an exercise during his presentation, and afterwards, sometime before 9 o'clock, it's your turn to respond and ask him questions. So I would like to hand over the floor to Dr. Yu.
I'd like to thank all of you, thank the Body, Mind, Spirit platform for organizing this. And I'm very excited to be here. This is actually the first talk that I'm giving in this topic since I've been in Hong Kong for 25 years. That's actually in Cantonese as well. So I was born in the United States. I grew up there, but I've been in Hong Kong for the last 25 years or so. Yeah. My background's actually in electrical engineering and computer science. I teach in a design school. But for at least the last 15 years, my main work has been in consciousness, is understanding the mind-body relationship. And the objective for today and the talk today is to really work towards building a community of people who have had a spiritual emergency, a term spiritual emergency, or an awakening experience. Now, with all of the activities like COVID, Hong Kong, China matters, global warming, there are more and more people that are waking up and snapping out of the worldview that we've been taught and having experiences that modern society and traditional science can't explain. And so it's important right now, I think globally, to at least for people that have had these experiences, to build community for people to be able to share and collectively heal each other towards reaching our own individual human potential. An awakening experience, it's one of these things where if you've had an experience, and you talk to somebody else that's also had an experience, you can kind of tell where they're at. But if you've had an experience and the other person has never had an experience in their whole life, nothing you say to them is going to give them a real understanding of what the experience was. And so I know a lot of people that try to convince, try to make other people understand, but it creates conflict and misunderstanding. And a lot of divorces happen, you lose a lot of friends, and it's a very lonely experience. So that's why it's important to build a community. For us, one of the things is the community. The other piece is we're planning on organizing a regular series of festivals and gatherings here in Hong Kong to act as kind of a funnel to help make other people realize that organizations like this exist and communities of people like this exist. So I've had many experiences where I will look at someone and I will talk to them, and then after a while, after a bit of conversation, in our conversation, I tell them, you've had one of these experiences, haven't you? And they say, yes, but nobody understands me. So I just keep it to myself and I just live my life normally. And so part of the idea of a festival is to make it a broad festival, but to help identify and recognize people that may already exist in the community that have had these experiences. All right? And the main thing about this too is people that have these experiences in modern society today, they usually end up, if there's no one else to talk to them that has been through the experience, many of them end up in a mental hospital or a psych ward and then given pharmaceuticals, pills to eat, and then told, no, you're broken, your brain is, something's wrong with you and everything. And then they get confused and disoriented, and it may take them 10, 15, 20 years just to get back to some kind of normalcy. Whereas traditional practices like energy work, qigong, all of these things, being able to self-regulate, there are people with unique abilities that can help facilitate grounding and centering very quickly. And so part of this is building a community to be able to support other people going through these processes so that they don't have to end up in a mental hospital or a psych ward or criticized and chastised by their family and their loved ones and outcast by their friends. So it's not for everybody, but it's for, again, it's for people that have been through this. And the thing about this too is that for people that have been through the awakening, many of them develop unique gifts related to energy, related to being able to see things, feel things, empathize with people a lot more, feel people a lot closer, and they're a lot more sensitive. And developing a new science with the community of these people can greatly benefit everybody else, mankind. And so that's the objective of today's talk. Any questions so far, or? Okay, and just curious here, how many of you have had kind of spiritual emergency or awakening experiences? Anyone? A couple? Few? Several? Okay, wonderful. Okay.
Now what follows will be a presentation by Dr. Yu on mystical experiences. What are they?
So,
And then he will be talking about who are the people so lucky to have these kind of experiences and how do these come about. Then we will go through spiritual emergency. What are they? Is it common or inevitable? And who are the people most prone to have them? And then finally, how dangerous or damaging it is and what.
So it turns out, many of you have kids, children? Yeah. So you'll notice when you're born, when kids are born, they have no symbolic consciousness, right? You know, their minds are fairly empty. They act from their innate behaviors. They eat, they poop, they cry, they wee-wee. That's kind of about it. And there is no sense of self or even notion of object permanence. If you take a toy and you put it behind your back, from the baby's perspective, the toy is gone. They don't know that the toy is behind your back. And when you bring it back, they go, oh, there's a toy. Where did the toy go? There's the toy. Where did the toy go? Right? And then as they live their life, they start building a mental worldview. And the initial reality that they're born into, the initial worldview and reality that they're born into is the world of their family. Okay, and so their father, their mother, they set a certain environment and a certain regular time in which they eat or not, and there's a certain processes that are they become encultured into within the family. And then, are your kids teenagers or not yet? Yeah, they're teenagers? Okay, so when they reach 12 or so, they leave the realm of the family, and then they become more familiar with their friends in school, right? And then they develop and they come into the realm of consensus reality. Yeah? And so they learn maybe the habits of Hong Kong and everything. And then some of them may travel around the world. They may study in Europe or in the United States, and they travel around the world. And then they buy into consensus reality. So they watch the TV shows, the Marvel movies, they eat at McDonald's, they learn everything from their friends, and they learn about consensus reality. But for some people, what happens is they leave consensus reality and through one of these spiritual emergencies or these awakening experiences, and they come into a whole different realm where the subjective, their own experience, and the objective of consensus reality combine. And for some people, in terms of mystical experiences that Stephen was mentioning, some people may have an out-of-body experience. Some people may have a near-death experience. For many people, I have a dream and then my dreams start happening or something. I may have a vision of the future. For many people, what usually starts is coincidences start happening. You think about people, they call you, and all of these coincidences start happening quite regularly. And then sometimes when you talk to people, you feel like you can read their minds and you can feel into them and you can kind of see them and sense them. Some people have memories of past lives. And so there are a wide variety of experiences that society doesn't quite understand. And for some people this happens very infrequently, but it's something that they remember. Actually, let me take that back. Some people are actually born with unique experiences. And then usually what happens around here or here, society suppresses it. And so they learn, oh, don't do that, learn school instead. My mother doesn't love me unless I have good grades, so I will get good grades and I'll work towards that. But some people keep on to it and then develop it and refine it. So there are people that kind of develop and hold these experiences through here. But usually what happens is people are in this realm, and either they push really hard, it's because of a relationship or something, or my work, I'm pushing really hard. All of my energy is going to my head, and I'm thinking about things nonstop. And then if I'm open, surreal shit starts happening. So coincidences, synchronicities, all of these things start happening. And I try to figure out what's going on. And if I try to figure it out, even more interesting things happen. And then as I try to figure that out, even more interesting things happen. And I end up in a positive feedback loop where it just keeps adding on it. And then pretty soon, I'm not eating right. I'm not sleeping right. And then the body can't maintain this state. And then there's a crash, which is the dark night of the soul. And so a lot of bipolar disorder and a lot of these things are because the body and the body's processes are tied to the beliefs that I have and the symbols and the meanings that are in my head are more important and more real to the meanings of what's around me. And so that's what kind of kicks me out. And because I have no ability to self-regulate, that's why I end up kind of going up and then crashing and then going up and then crashing, which is the signature of bipolar disorder. But the whole thing is when you have a highly energized and elevated mind where there's a lot of energy, they talk about from an Eastern practice, the Kundalini arising, if all of the Kundalini is up, or a lot of Qigong practice, and I have the Qi flowing regularly, and I'm pushing really hard, then all of this energized state will give me realizations. And so then synchronicities, being able to maybe see auras, sense people, all of these things happen from an energized physiology. And again, for many people, because nobody here told me any of this existed, it then becomes kind of surreal. I'm not sure what's real and what's not real anymore. And then if I'm very much thinking, oh, what if the CIA finds out, or what if the Chinese government finds out, will I be a lab rat or something? You know, a lot of these stories that may kick you into fear may take you out even further. And then that's usually when you end up not trusting people, being very fearful, holding within yourself, not knowing what to do. And in extreme situations, this is where the dangerous part is, the dangerous part, the slide, but the slide above. The dangerous part of this is a lot of people, if I don't know the difference between the stimuli coming from my thoughts versus what's coming from the moment, I may end up committing suicide because I'm just too confused and I'm too sensitive and the world is too crazy for me. And so this is why building a community and having support for these very sensitive people that are gifted is very important. All right? And so that's kind of this danger of this. And a lot can be done for people. If you have people that have been through the process, part of it is to be able to regulate, to be able to go to where they're at, wherever their mind is and everything. And then at least the approach that I take is then to just kind of connect with them, make sure there's trust, and then just, I'm going to touch you, is that okay? Is just bring them back to their body and then just bring them more to presence and bring them back into their body. And then ideally, let them know that everything is okay and that they're normal through this process. And ideally, reconnect them to the right here, right now, it's good to be alive experience. That's one approach from a bottom-up approach. From a top-down approach, there are people, and we have people in this community here, that can do things kind of at the astral level, do depossessions. There are other modalities that are a little more esoteric that can address the issues and the holdings within the psyche of individuals going through an awakening process. All right, so the main thing is, yes, it can be dangerous, but generally speaking, if they follow that path, and ultimately, the only way out is through. You have no choice, you have to go through. Is that with a community, it's going to be yourself alone ultimately. But with a community, it doesn't have to be so terrifying. And things can be done. It takes a village, which is why in working to build a community, we're looking to create a village here in this metropolis of Hong Kong. Next. And so next, I just want to show you, next slide, one more slide. I just want to show you, there are a couple films, and if people are interested in this, I can leave my contact. I have the full film of this, and we can actually screen it in the future if you like. And there are many other films like this. So this is one film, my friend Phil Borges made this film. There are a couple other films now of people that have been through this awakening process and sharing their stories as well. And there's another film called Emerging Proud, almost like, homosexuals coming out of the closet. Many people that have had these experiences are now recording and creating their testimonials and sharing their experiences. And so there's another film called Emerging Proud. If you search it online, you can see that. And there are many books, and there are many universities now and researchers that are studying this as an area. One of the interesting things about this, especially now, is that with advancements in brain studies, seeing what's happening to a person when they're going through an awakening experience, and looking at the brain during a near-death experience, when someone is, they've kind of are dying, and also looking at brains of people that are taking psychedelics, like plant medicines from Peru, or 5-MeO-DMT. There are similar brain signatures, and so we can actually study all of these different phenomena that are experienced from different people, and studying them by looking at what's happening within their brains, which is really interesting. Also, let me just put to you also that a lot of the work in this area right now is still being done in the West, in the United States and in Europe. And so a lot of the Chinese and Indian traditions, like Qigong, Neidan, these Taoist practices, are just starting to be studied. In fact, I'm actually doing some work with counterparts in mainland China of these long-term practitioners. The work in the West was actually started by the Mind and Life Institute, which was founded by Francisco Varela and the Dalai Lama, where they took a lot of these Tibetan monks and then studied their brains. And you can actually measure changes in the physiology in the brain and brain activation. And actually the growth of the brain in the prefrontal cortex related to meditation. And so a lot of these Eastern practices, these practices from Asia, are actually being studied and validated in the West, which makes this a really exciting time. Next slide. And so we have a model for personal development and that I've been working on. I have a deeper model that I can go through, and I have a very long talk that's over an hour long just around this framework that I go into a lot more detail. If you search my name, Gino Yu, and personal development, mental health, and human potential, I gave a talk in Singapore on this topic, going through the framework. But very briefly, what happens is, as I showed in the earlier slide, when you're born, there is no symbolic consciousness. Your parents lay their conditioning, the education system lay their conditioning, and society lay their conditioning, and you buy into consensus reality, but you're fragmented. And so, generally speaking, the people that are working in central, in the finance businesses, the people working at McDonald's, the people working at 7-Eleven, all of these people are functioning within the realm of consensus reality. The schools and everything, kind of, this is most people. Some people work for a while in a bank or something, and they realize, hey, I don't feel this isn't really fulfilling, and then they leave. Or what they look at is they look at consensus reality and say, this is all bullshit. I'm gonna go all in on one thing. I'm gonna follow my own path. Okay? And following my own path, these are outliers. These could be artists, the artists that we have in the community, the entrepreneurs, the scientists. So these are people that leave the realm of consensus reality. They have to go outside of consensus reality, discover something new, and then bring it back, right? And so if you look at something like Richard Branson creating a rocket to go out into space, he has to create something new that no one's done before, or push themselves really, really, really hard, like the Hong Kong fencing person. He's all in on one thing, okay? The, what's his name? The gold medal. You know who I'm talking about. Yeah, and so everyone knows him in Hong Kong now. But for him, I wake up, I fence, I go to sleep, I wake up, I fence, I go to sleep. I'm just doing this one thing. And so that's true for the Olympic athlete. That's true for the entrepreneur. You know, starting a company, I wake up, I just work on my company, I sleep, I wake up, I work on my company, I sleep. All of these things, and when you go all in on one thing, so normally for consensus reality people, I have a bad day at work. Maybe I go hug my daughter, I call my mom, I feel better, and I'm doing all of these different things, and I have many different projects. So if one project isn't doing good, I'll just do another project. If another project isn't doing good, I'll just do another project. I can drift around, and my energy system, I can do other things to help regulate. But for an outlier, I'm all in on one thing, and when I do that, my whole energy and focus is on the one thing. When it does really good, I feel great. When it goes down, I feel really bad. And so what happens is I push out, and when I push out with that dedication and I have the energy and focus, and if I'm open, that's when magic happens. That's when interesting things happen. I become aware, I become sensitive, and I develop access to other forms of information. And if I push really hard, as I was mentioning before, I may have an awakening experience. And then usually for an awakening experience, it's maybe one or two interesting things, and then all of a sudden, interesting thing, interesting thing, interesting thing, interesting thing, and then it happens all the time, and then it goes exponential. It very, very quickly, within the space of usually about maybe 2 to 3 weeks, where it just builds up, and then even more things, and then I get more downloads, I get more information, I make more realizations of my past. All of these things, it's like there was something that was slightly off, and when it happens, it clicks, and then all of the energy and everything makes sense. And I know, and I can see, and I know, and then I feel tingling in my head and everything. Yeah? Now the thing is, it's very seductive because your physiology for most people, they're driven by the peak performance flow state. And so what happens is ideally during this period, somebody that has been through the experience can come to you, can match your energy, and then, okay, just take a deep breath, relax, 放松, relax, just stay with me, everything's fine, we're just in a room, these people aren't here to hurt you. And then take the energy and bring themselves more present, be aware of everything that's happening. Now, the interesting thing, and I'm going to talk about too, is that if you bring someone fully present, they can be hyper aware of everything, and they can feel, and they can be aware of their breath. But they can't think, and their mind is clear. If you can't think, and you can be very aware, and you're aware of your breath, if you can be aware of your breath, you're aware of your emotional state, because your breath relates to your emotional state. And if you bring yourself fully here, you can't think. And if there's no thoughts, there's nothing driving your energy even higher. And so you can come back and bring yourself fully here. And if you bring yourself fully here and be hyper aware of everything, anyone that tries to do this, that has not had the experience of doing this before, will realize, because there's a near infinite resolution in space and time, you can be very aware of every little thing that's going on, is that to be fully aware of the moment and every little thing that's happening is exhausting. And if you're exhausted, you'll be able to fall asleep. And if you can fall asleep, then the body will then regulate and you will come down to be stabilized. And so we're going to explore this a little bit more experientially. So after awakening, ideally there's an acute period, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, ideally somebody gets to you. If not, they'll probably end up in a psych ward. or a monastery or something, ideally. Very few people can make it back on their own, through this. So after the awakening is stabilization, is for them, because all of their channels are open and they're very sensitive, is to be able to self-regulate, is to really let go of the influences of the stories and the beliefs, and then do the inner work of forgiveness, qigong, release, whatever emotions are suppressed, to let it go, forgiveness. And then ideally, at the very bottom, is the, wow, I'm still alive. It's good to be alive. I have a lot to be grateful for. This moment is a miracle. And it's to be able to first stabilize them so that they can function. Many people, because they're so sensitive, even just in a room like this, where, there are all these people, I can feel all of your energies and everything, and she's not paying attention, they're with them, and they don't like me, and I'm getting all of these things. And then maybe I'm seeing things, and I'm hearing things, and I have voices in my head, and I just, it's just too much. I can't deal with it. It's just too much, right? And so part of that is, okay, breath, awareness of body, and then to be able to first stabilize them. And this may take a period of months to a year or two. And then after they're stabilized, they have to find either they go live in a monastery or an intentional community, or they have to find a new vocation. And so maybe before I was working as an investment banker or I was an accountant, but now I feel like I can't really do that anymore. I have to do something that calls more to my soul. And so the next part is to find a new vocation. Some of these people, because they have this sensitivity, they may work with special needs children, or they become counselors or therapists or something in this area, or healers or something in this area. And then if they can do there and they can make enough to put a roof over their head, and put food on their table, they can develop. But I think what happens in modern society today, some people wake up, they have these experiences, they can't stabilize, they can't become sustainable, so they become homeless. And then they become addicted to things, living on the streets. And so we have a theory that a percentage of the people that are homeless are actually people that have had some kind of awakening experience, but didn't have a community and didn't have a support and didn't land very well. And so they ended up homeless. And so even for there, we have some ideas of, bringing people like this, maybe having a house near a farm, giving them a structured life, having different healers and mystics work on them so that they can potentially stabilize, reconnect to the innate joy of being, find inner stillness, be able to self-regulate, and then be able to develop their gifts. And so after sustainability, the next stage is thriving, is to become a mystic. And a mystic is someone that can function and perform and can communicate very well, very clearly in the consensus reality material world, but then are also adept in the esoteric realm and have a deep appreciation for the esoteric realm. And so that's kind of this mystic. And so a large part of the issue is, and so right now, all of this is mishmashed into one. And so most people treat everybody the same, but I don't think that treating everyone the same is appropriate. And so part of this is understanding where a person's at and then creating the products and services and support for them going through whatever they're going through. And so these boxes here are systems that we're building now here. And for me, part of the COVID situation, and for me not traveling for a year and a half, Timothy can tell you, normally before COVID, I would be on the road most of the time, but James can tell you as well. But for the last year and a half, I haven't traveled at all. And what I've been thinking about is, what are the systems that humanity needs that modern society doesn't yet provide? And so some of these systems, these two boxes I'll talk about first. To address awakening, we have a project that's just launching now called Antarabhav. Antarabhav is the Sanskrit word for the bardos. And it's Antarabhav, what we're doing is we're creating a global network of volunteers, of people that have been through a spiritual emergency awakening experience that are stable enough to be able to provide support to help midwife other people going through the process. And so right now we're building a collection of volunteers from all around the world. If you're familiar with an app called Clubhouse, we're actually having regular meetings on Clubhouse and building the community. And once we have enough volunteers from around the world, the site will be that anyone that's having an awakening experience and disoriented, they can go to the site, press a button, and within half an hour, a Zoom room or something will be opened with people that will be there to be able to support them, like that, for free. And so this is what Antarabhav is about. And what we're also doing is for the volunteers is also promoting them for their work. And this thing is for free, but the antarabhav.org is for free. .com, what we will do is promote. Some of them are counselors and everything. And so we want to have them sustainable as well. But we don't want the situation in the United States right now. What's happening is they're trying to support people with going through awakening, but they have these clinical psychiatrists and everything, and because it's the United States, they have to have insurance and everything, and most of these services are very expensive, and most people going through awakening don't have money because they gave everything away as part of their journey. And you don't want to be in a situation where I would like to help you, but you can't afford me. Yeah, I'd like to help you in your moment of need, but you can't afford me. And so we're really looking at this as kind of a service to support people kind of going through awakening. And then, assuming they can stabilize, we also have a project called Fusukoi, which is a global decentralized modern mystery school. And so there are people that have had awakening that have developed, I call non-ordinary or realized abilities, or to put it in a different way, 特异功能. And these come from the wisdom traditions all around the world, in China, Wudang, in India, in Russia, in Africa, in South America, American Indians, the Finnish in Scandinavia, all around the world, there are these people that have developed these unique, interesting abilities. And once you have someone that's awake and has open, they can kind of work towards training them in developing their abilities. And so this is the mystery school, which we're still kind of working out the model for this. And then we have Project Fusukoi, where we have research labs all around the world with researchers that have been through the awakening experience, and this network of people with unique abilities to try to develop research methods to study them and to validate them. Not so much to change the masses, because I think that's not really possible yet, but to help understand what's going on, to help with pedagogy, with transformation for individuals. Now, for the outliers, the artists, entrepreneurs, and scientists, they're the ones that are pushing really hard that may be susceptible for an awakening experience. We have a couple projects, one called Mystagogical and another one called Art Transcend, which is really reframing entrepreneurship as a spiritual path. And so here, the idea is we run training for entrepreneurs. And then as the entrepreneur tries to create their company, they're dealing with the unknown. And once you're dealing with the unknown, your shadows will appear, your early wounds and early trauma will also appear. And as they appear, we also have this network of healers and mystics to support them through their journey. Okay? And so with this, we have a model that is also sustainable, and the resources from this can support financially these other activities. Ideally, among this community of people here, the idea is this community of people then create new products and services for the masses. So these are the people that are still in consensus reality and making money and worrying about money. And so the idea is to create better, more regenerative, more holistic, more sustainable products for a consensus reality, to move consensus reality, but leveraging people with these kind of expertise and understanding. And so this area and this area, to a certain extent, money is involved and becomes important. But for this area, the idea is it's not about money at all. It's about doing what we came here to do, which, if you've been through the process completely, the objective, many people come to the realization, is to wake everybody else up. So that humanity can and from that perspective, the more people you guys help and wake up, the less I have to worry about. And so it's really about cooperating and working together for a better future for the next generations. And aligning with the bigger forces at work, the will of the universe. But that's more of a mystical statement. Is this making sense, or? Yeah? Good? Okay, great. Okay. So that's the framework, basically in a nutshell. But if you want more details, I can go into a lot more details. There's a talk that's already online that's recorded, and I'm more than happy to go through that talk as detailed as you'd like. But next slide.
Time for some exercises.
Yeah, next slide. And so the basis for this is, and the challenge that we have in terms of getting different people to work together is many people that have had awakening experiences have come along different paths, right? Some people see auras, some people hear voices, some people see entities, some people have seen the future, some people go into state, and there are many different people with many different gifts, but they don't know or appreciate other people's gifts and everything. And so because of that, and because the modern world doesn't understand them, they create a psychological wall. So I just keep by myself. I don't let anybody in. I keep this. I just do the thing that I do very well, and I only let a few people into my circle because everybody else just doesn't understand me, and it's a waste of time and everything. And so the challenge is, how do you take these different people that are lone wolves, to create wolf packs? How do you get them together to trust each other and to come up with a common vernacular, common terminology and language? Now, the basis that I have, my background is actually in electrical engineering and computer science. So I researched the relationship between, so my background's looking at hardware and software. So, if you mind me borrowing this. So in a computer, there's hardware, and then there's software that's running the hardware. Right now, for all of you, all of your bodies are here. My body is here. Our bodies are like the hardware, and your experience of this moment and understanding what I'm saying is like the software. And so what is this mind-body relationship? And so if you look at physiology as hardware and phenomenology as software, wherever you go, from a hardcore epistemological perspective of how do you know what you know, all there is to everything in the entire universe at any one moment is just what you know from your senses, which is literally what's physically around you. There's how your body feels, whether you're hungry, thirsty, or have to go to the bathroom, and there's what you know from the conditioned mind and thought. As an example, does this lemon exist? Yes or no? How do you know that this lemon exists? You can pass it around. How do you know that this lemon exists? How do you know that the lemon exists? Because you can see it, you can smell it, you can feel it, right? Right now, does the United States exist? Does the United States exist right now? Yes or no? Yes. How do you know it exists right now? Can you see it? Can you feel it? No? It's in thought. It's in this mental space, right? Well, let's try a different thing. What about this microphone? Does the microphone exist? What about central? IFC. Does IFC exist right now? How do you know it exists right now? It's in thought. And so if you look at it, in every moment, everything in the entire universe, you either know from what's physically around you, how your body feels, or there's what you know from thought. Right? Everything in the entire universe is in one of those categories. And there's a relationship between your thoughts and your beliefs and your physical body. Right? And so for me, all of my experiences from when I was born to today are encoded in my body. Right? All of your experiences from all of your understanding is all of the experiences from when you were born to today are encoded in your body. So what's happening when we're speaking? Now, turns out there's a relationship between the mind and the body. First of all, if you can bring yourself fully here, if your autonomic nervous system, and the problem right now is that our thoughts and our experience of the moment through the senses uses the same hardware. It uses the same endocrine system, which regulate your hormones, and it uses the same autonomic nervous system, which is your fight or flight response. But the issue is your awareness doesn't know the difference. it doesn't know the difference between the stimuli coming from this mental space versus what's coming from the moment through the senses. Okay? Now, another very interesting thing, which we're going to come into the experiential side of things, is it turns out that eye contact is an important thing in communication. And so for that, I'm going to show you demonstrate something, but I want you to try it out with a partner. But right now, I need a volunteer that can speak English or Mandarin. English or Mandarin, yeah?
both.
Okay, great. Can you put that down for a second? So I'm going to just show you what's going to happen here. Have a seat here.
Yeah, sure.
And then I'll kind of face you. Have a seat here. You've seen me do this before too. And so what I'm going to do is it turns out when we maintain eye contact with somebody, you know, if I talk to you like this right now, this feels a certain way, right? But if I start talking to you like this, I can still see you, but you're going to notice that the connection between you and me feels different. Can you feel that this feels different? Yes? Yeah? Okay. And so it turns out with this, and this is a common thing that you can do this with anyone among your friends, but what's your name?
Wendy.
Wendy. Thanks, Wendy. If I ask you to stare in my eyes right now, now without moving your eyes, can you tell me what you had for lunch 4 days ago?
I couldn't remember.
No? Try to remember without moving your eyes. Without moving your eyes.
Maybe rice.
What day was it 4 days ago?
It was Tuesday.
Okay. What did you have for lunch on Tuesday?
Rice or noodles, I cannot remember.
Okay, you'll notice it's difficult. But while you're staring at me right now, you can see your peripheral vision, you can hear the sounds, you can smell what the room smells like, you can feel your breathing. If I ask you to wiggle your toes right now, you can do that while you're staring at me. And phenomenologically, this feels a certain way. Okay, I want you to remember how this feels, and I'm going to ask you another question. You can move your eyes if you like, but I'd like you to answer the question. And the question is, what's 17 multiplied by 13? 17乘以13是什么?
I can move my eyes.
Yeah,
221.
Yeah, it's 221. But you'll notice to do the calculation, you're going to disconnect from this and you're going to go into thought. And so it turns out we're either present or we're in thought, but you can't do both things at the same time. It's a hardware problem. Now watch this, maintaining eye contact again. What's 1 plus 1? 2 plus 2?
4.
Do you love your parents?
Yes.
So there are certain things that you can answer from presence. So it turns out if what I'm saying is consistent with what you truly believe, you can stay present with me like this. But as soon as I say something that has an implication that's different from what your body truly believes, you're going to look away to process. So by knowing what I'm saying and seeing how she responds, I can start mapping out what her belief system is. And once I know what her belief system is, I have all the tools that I need to communicate with her more effectively, manipulate her, or reprogram her. And so I can tell very quickly where she's at just by being aware of my own state and seeing how she responds. And so what's actually happening when we're speaking here? First of all, I'm holding my body in a certain state. I'm uttering these words. These words are vibrating, the molecules, they're vibrating her eardrums, they're being processed by her brain, and they're going to her prefrontal cortex. Now, for her to understand me, she has to have the same dictionary as me. We have to have the same dictionary. 我现在讲国语的话，你也听得懂呀，所以你听得懂，可是可能这些老外可能听不懂。
I can translate for them.
因为我们有同样的字典，so we have to have the same dictionary.
是的。
And you actually also have to match my energy.
是的。
You have to match. So if I shift a little, like, oh, do you know where the lemon went? Where's the lemon? No. But if I shift the context, then the energy changes and the feeling changes, right?
Yeah.
And so what's happening when we're speaking and maintaining eye contact is I'm traversing my embodied knowing. So I'm going through what I know. And if what I'm saying is within your embodied knowing, you're tracking me and you're nodding your head and you're saying, yeah. And so there's a resonance between my body and your body. But as soon as I say something that's not in your embodied knowing or has an implication that's different, you're going to disconnect from this. You're going to go into your own referential understanding. Does that make sense? And they're going to come back. And so what's actually happening when we're speaking is we're comparing my embodied knowing with her embodied knowing. That's what's happening. Now, the other thing that's very interesting that I will share with you is that when we speak maintaining eye contact, just as we can be aware of the person that just left and we can hear the sounds right now, as I'm speaking to you from here, you can feel your breathing. You can be aware of your breath. And if you're here, you can always be aware of your breath. Now, breath is important because if I ask you to breathe deeply from your belly, just breathing from the belly, exercising the diaphragm. In Chinese, we call it 丹田呼吸. If I ask you to breathe deeply from your belly and try to feel angry at the same time, it's very difficult. Anger is a chest breath. Fear is a held breath. But if I'm relaxed and I'm in parasympathetic, I can breathe deeply from my belly. And you're going to notice when we speak like this, you can actually be aware of your breath, but you're going to notice as soon as you go into thought, guess what's going to happen? As soon as you go into thought, you lose awareness to breath. And once you lose awareness to breath, you lose awareness to your own emotional state. And so part of communication is being able to speak and then also feel
your breath.
Feel breath, but then also feel what's happening in your body. So not only can you be aware of your breath, but you can be aware of sensation. So I can speak to you like this right now, but if I, like right now, if we maintain eye contact, if I shift my breathing a little, I'm going to go from here to just...
It seems like detached. Yeah.
I'm just shifting my breathing into sadness, and you may feel sadness too, because the intersubjective and resonance, if I shift hard into sadness, you'll also feel sadness. So as I'm speaking, I know what I'm saying, I know where I'm coming from, and I'm seeing how you're responding, but I'm also feeling how you're responding to understand your worldview. Okay? And so what I'd like you to do right now, thank you, is to find a partner and then just to explore maintaining eye contact and communicating from engagement. Now, before I go into this, culturally, it's different. Like a lot of people, culturally, if I look at you like this, it's very different from me looking at you like this. Some people look at eye contact as threatening. Now, there are a lot of cultural aspects, but what we actually do in our lab is we can actually measure brain waves, and we notice when we maintain eye contact, parts of my brain become coupled to parts of your brain. I can actually see the similar waveforms. But as soon as I look away, or if I wear sunglasses, that becomes decoupled. There's still a lot you can get from voice, and you can sense all of this, but interesting thing is eye contact. And so what I'd like you to do right now for maybe 5 or 10 minutes is to just really explore, find someone that you don't know, have a conversation, and you'll notice, just one thing you'll notice, if you agree to maintain eye contact and speak, You can speak from your heart. You can speak from your embodied knowing. If it's something that's happening together for us in this moment, we can talk about it. But if it's something you only know conceptually, you will not be able to access it from this. And if you agree to maintain eye contact and speak, most arguments will die away very quickly because you have no ability to access conceptual knowledge. All right? And so although our genetics are different and our autobiographical histories are completely different, the underlying physiological mechanisms are similar. And that's what we research, part of what we research in our lab. And so I'd like to maybe take 10, 15 minutes for you to find someone next to you nearby, and then just try to have a conversation. And as you do this, try to be aware of the surroundings, be aware of your breath, and just be aware of how you engage. All right, if we can come back.
Now, before we move on, what I can see that the researchers will enjoy this talk very much. What if we
Gino, we still use the light. Other, you don't use it. You can turn all the lights on, which must.
Okay, yeah, no, I have a couple more slides. I'll do a couple more slides. Actually, let me run through a couple more slides, and then we'll do questions. Yeah, huh? Yeah, I'll just do these 3 slides real quick. I just have 2 more slides. So in terms of framing, when you're talking to somebody, there's a whole nother workshop we can do that would take at least an hour plus just on communication. So there are a lot of nuances, hopefully, you've discovered just by talking to another person right now. But generally speaking, there are 3 levels of use of language and framing of reality, especially when you're talking to another person. Now, at a very deep level, I'll just start from here. At the lowest level, if you understand all of the spiritual texts, who you truly are is not your thoughts, you're not your ideas, you're not your physical body. From an Eastern perspective, who you truly are is the thing that's aware of this. You're the underlying awareness that's aware of all of this. And so from that idea, the Zhuangzi, am I a man dreaming I'm a butterfly, dreaming I'm a man, or am I a butterfly dreaming? What is all of this? And at the underlying, at the third level, who you truly are is the thing that's aware of this. And from that perspective, when I'm talking to Wendy, if I can understand this, her deepest truth is this is just her dream. And from that perspective, I can just listen to everything Wendy is saying to understand her reality, because I'm just a character in Wendy's dream. And so this allows you to surrender your view, right? And ultimately, as we go in more advanced states of consciousness, who's driving all of this anyways is a mystery. And we can get more into that. But this allows you to surrender. So if Wendy were standing on a ledge about to commit suicide, I would not argue with Wendy. Everything that Wendy is saying is true, is the reality. And I'm just there to understand it, to try to get her back to groundedness. The second level is what we were talking about here. The second level is all there is what's here, just this room. There is no central, there is no United States, my wife and kids, my house, typo, all of that is just an idea. And the only thing that's here is this. And I can use language to talk about the lemon. I can talk about the green shawl that Lucy here is wearing. And I can talk about things here. And then we can look at metaphysically how and why things happen from here. So there's just us and there's just this. And so I'm not here to change your worldview. You're not here to change my belief system. We just use language just to talk about what we have a shared experience of in this moment. That's kind of this level. And then this level is consensus reality and story. Now, if Lucy and I cannot agree that this is a lemon, anything we say here is not going to work, right? And so what this allows us to do, especially when you have people that you're dealing with that may be very sensitive, is just to be very mindful of how you use language. And so there are 4 ways in which I can use language. One is I can use language to talk about the use of language. Number 2 is I can ask you a question, or I can tell you a story, which will direct your awareness to this mental space. Or number 3 is I can ask you how you feel about something. Timothy, how do you feel about our master's program? How do you feel about the Afghanistan situation? So that will direct the awareness to the somatic. And then number 4 is I can direct your awareness to this lemon. This seems to be a lemon. If I say this seems to be a lemon, there's no argument, right? If I ask Timothy how he feels about Afghanistan, there's no argument. He's allowed to have a feeling. The only time there's going to be conflict is in the realm of story, right? And so when I talk to somebody, like somebody new, I'll say, hey, Timothy, how's it going? And then what are you up to these days? And then usually I'll talk about like work or the weather or some news. And then what I'll do is I'll listen. What is his worldview? What are the symbols that are important to him? Maybe his daughter's future, his relationship with his wife, the career, the money, whatever. And so I'll look at what things are important, and then I go from this, and then what I do is that I speak to him in his language using his symbols that have meaning to him. And then I go from thoughts to feelings. What do you feel about the economic situation in Hong Kong? Or what do you feel about, to the somatic, and then from the somatic to what's happening here. And if you do this very well, no conflict, because you're speaking to them from their worldview. Okay? So it's really looking at, because you have a different genetics and you have a different autobiographical history, it's not my job to change your belief system. And you're allowed to have a completely different belief system than me. I'm allowed to have a completely different belief system than you. The problems of the world today is people are fighting over their belief systems. And they're at different stages of development and everything. It's a shit show. And so how do we use language properly to start understanding and building community and then asking collective questions to the universe? Okay, next slide. This is kind of the last slide I'll have for now. And ultimately, for the advanced people that have had awakening experiences, the big thing is to be able to let go of all stories. If you know the story, and if you can let go of all stories and the influences of the symbols on the processes of physiology, and if you're able to do that, then literally the only thing that's left is how your body feels and what's happening in this moment in this room right now. There is nothing beyond this. And if you understand that, that's the story of the Buddha underneath the tree, right? Siddhartha, I'm trying to end suffering. And he sits there, the daughters of Mara, desires, fears come. Buddhist Siddhartha is still sitting there. Finally, Mara shows up, the demon, and asks Siddhartha, who's here to witness your enlightenment? And then Siddhartha responds, the earth is here to witness my enlightenment, because I know the difference between what's coming from here versus what's coming from this. And in Christian terms, if I can let go of everything, then the only thing that's left is what's physically around me and how my body feels, which is what it was like when I was a baby. And in Christian terms, that's what it means to be reborn, because I know that everything that's happening, all of you that are here right now with me, and everything that's happening right now is by the grace of God. Allah Akbar. Right? And I can surrender to that which is. Now, you will let go of everything. Whether it's now or moments before you die, you will let go of everything. And the point behind this is that most of the things that fill up your mind come from beliefs from outside. And if you can empty that and still it, then another form of knowing emerges. Some people call it intuition or insight, knowing without knowing how you know. And so by letting all this go, this becomes more apparent. And as you live and explore, you begin to relish in the mystery and wonder of life. Every moment and every action and intention is a question to the universe. And you realize that every moment is a miracle.